Hey, Fraser, thanks so much for joining us. You're embarked on this cool project called the Interview Project. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Sure. First off, thank you so much for having me. This is it's sort of crazy simple. It's basically the idea that multiple people can get advantages from interviewing, right? Um, the person who's getting interviewed gets the opportunity to talk about something, usually something about themselves or their business or their project, their idea, their book, whatever. Um, and they get exposure because typically you do an interview, somebody ends up watching it. And then the interviewer gets some benefit because they get to spend time in a sort of unusual way with the person that they're interviewing, talking about that topic. Sometimes there's a benefit because, like in business, if I'm interviewing Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or something like that, well, being on the same stage with somebody who's a big celebrity in that industry can be beneficial. But if you're a student, which of course this is project for kids, you get the opportunity to be talking to people, real people, people who are accomplished in certain fields or just have interesting stories to tell, and you get to be spending time with them. Now, what I've originally, I think this originally came out as a homeschooling project. I just thought it was like, hey, you can basically talk to whoever you want to talk to if you just identify, create an interview, right? You can go out and request to talk to the president of the United States if you want. Um, and then I remember we started talking about, I started doing this college showcase. My daughter was probably at that point 10th grader. And I was like, what if we had a situation where we had students reaching out to college admissions counselors or alumni directors or whatever and asking them about their school? And we could have this kind of college showcase. I love the idea. And I especially love the idea of delegating all of that work and having the person that you delegate it to be really excited to get it right. If you're like, I can't wait to go talk to the director of admissions for Harvard or whatever, that's great. So that was one idea, and I remember there was a lot of like, hey, we could do an interview on this and do an interview on this and do an interview on this, in terms of creating the platform. Now, usually, as sometimes happens with my ideas, usually it's just me sitting around thinking, "Ooh, this would be great," and then I go out and say, "Hey, world, we've got this great idea," and it's crickets sometimes. But I never lost the sight of that interview concept and the platform. And so I've always had the tool there. And I can't really remember why we decided, oh, it's just a lot of, I like the idea of talking to people. I like the idea of making it easier for other people to share their stories. And we've started getting into this place where I've also been focused on how to take the video and outsource it to video editors and then outsource it to regular editors and then figure out a way to make it profitable slash easy for people to share the videos. So right now, I'm in a situation where I've got unlimited people who would love to share their stories. And all that is really necessary in order to make that happen or work is to have people who are willing to do those interviews. So Fraser, that sounds really interesting. So how does it work right now? If somebody wants to do this, how does it work? That's a great question. So it kind of goes in stages, I guess it depends a little bit on whether you. So fundamentally, what I have is a team of interviewers who either are ready to take on different assignments or they're bringing their own assignments to the floor. And it's pretty simple. Again, let's say you say, I want to reach out to Oprah Winfrey, right? Or you want to reach out to the football coach at your high school, or you want to reach out to the star actor in your high school play. Great. You got to think a little bit. First, make sure you connect with us and get on the directory so we can give you access to tools, training, resources, and the tools necessary to fit your interview into our box, if that is something you want to do. And then you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this interview. Can we do it? And one of the things we talk about is focusing on what type of interview it is, right? Is it a uh, introductory interview, like hi, this is me, this is who I am? Is it an explanation or teaching interview? Let's say that you're trying to teach the concept of, quantum physics or something like that. Or is it a debate? Is it a discussion? Did you just write a book and are you just sort of, narrating your book? Um, so there's lots of different ways to do an interview, and that is sort of you have an idea, you propose it to them, or they have an idea and they propose it to us, and then we have the interviewers go look and say, who would I want to follow up with? Let's say there's a school board election or the gubernatorial election in Virginia, and we're saying, hey, it would be really great to talk to both the Democratic and the Republican and maybe a third party candidate to ask them 5 questions about their vision for Virginia. All right, maybe that's one person doing all 5. Maybe that's 5 people. Who knows? So fundamentally, the way it starts is the person, the team, raising their hand, saying, "I'm interested in doing this," and then 2, it's reaching out to the subject of the interview and identifying a few things that you guys can agree on, right? Like, is this going to be a Zoom interview? I'm guessing most of them will be. How long do we want it to be? What type, as I said, is it? What are the topics we want to cover? Are there questions that you, the subject, really want me to ask? Are there questions that you, the interviewer, really want to ask? Are there questions that the subject does not want to be covered? We want this to be on this topic, not on this topic. And then we take that together, and the interviewer basically sketches out what the interview is going to be, using a tool that can help you just sort of organize it, and then schedule it. Either, we have a Zoom. I'm recording this on Zoom. We have a Zoom place, a Zoom account where people can join up and record their interviews, or of course the person can schedule it on their own. And then once they're done, they take that video and we plug it into our system for producing it, editing it, and distributing it. Now, my goal for this is to have it be where somebody can, where sort of everybody involved can benefit. And in some cases, it's benefit from getting experience. In some cases, it's benefit from getting exposure. In other cases, it's benefit from getting paid, right? Getting paid to do the interview, getting paid to do the video editing, getting paid to share it around. And that payment process or that structure is a little different depending on who a person is and what they're doing. So that might be something to explore, but that's the goal. We really want it to be a situation where I like to liken it like a market or a machine where everybody benefits and everybody's getting a piece of what's going on. And they can, it obviously makes that interplay makes the whole thing work. So so I'm having trouble understanding, what does an interview look like? Like, what does an interview look like? All right. So it's very simple, right? We're in the middle of an interview right now. Now, you may have said, hey, I'm going to be interviewing this guy and I don't know anything about him. So let me check my email or let me ask him what kinds of questions he wants me to ask him. Or maybe I go look online and see what the heck he's doing. And you might formulate in your head some questions. Now, I might, as the interview subject, I might formulate some questions or topics that I'd like to talk about. So I would let you know. And then what do we need to decide? We obviously need to decide when we're going to do it and how we're going to do it. So we're doing this on Zoom and we're doing it at 2:21 on July 24th. If it's just you and me, that's a little easier. And then we need to decide, I think, 2 major things, maybe 3. One is, how long do we expect it to be? This is a 5-minute interview. Is it a 15-minute interview? Is it a 30-minute interview? What was that? 3 things. That one thing that I would say is going to come up is just, what do we do if we don't like what's being said, right? And I don't mean like censorship. I mean, oh, I was really rambling there. Well, because it is a video and because we're going to edit it, that's fine. but there are things that we can do while we're doing an interview to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to talk to the interviewers about how to just, if you need to cut something, how to do it. If you need to pause, how to do it, just so it's easier to edit it afterwards. But a lot of times, if we're not broadcasting the interview live, like this one, we're not broadcasting live, then, you can just stop if you want to. But it's always a good idea to go into it as if you are producing it live. So I said, yes, you got to decide when you're going to do it. You got to decide who's on it. You got to decide the topic, and then decide duration, and then also decide, what to do. Do we have any signals, right? Do we say cut, or do we say action, that kind of thing? Does that answer your question? Yeah. So also, what types of, you mentioned training. What types of training is provided to the teens? So the goal is for people to be able to get started as quickly as possible in terms of interviewing whoever they want. And I'm aware that there may be a confidence or comfort level that somebody needs to get to. So one of the things that we do is we take this video, the video that we're doing right here, and we set it up so that a student interviewer can kind of go through it and imagine that they're doing this interview, right? What questions are they going to ask? Do they want to ask this question? And then what answer do they get? Do they want to ask this question? What answer do they get? Another thing that we can do is they can watch other videos. I created this tool that allows you to kind of simulate selecting kind of an Elon Musk or Joe Biden or Donald Trump, and just then saying, what questions would I want to ask them? And then imagining that process, because fundamentally you are not the story, right? You are the person who's just asking the questions, and then the other person is sharing their knowledge, experience, peculiarities, whatever. So your job is to move it along a little bit, right? Is to give it so it's an interplay. So it really can be very, very straightforward and easy. Or you could be talking to somebody that is a childhood hero or a childhood villain of yours, and you really want to dig in and ask them all thousands of questions, which is great too. So lots of ways to play. One thing I will say, as I'm aware of all the gesticulation and hand stuff that I'm doing, part of the training that I see is, do's and don'ts, right? Like right now, I've got my laptop on my lap. So if I'm moving around, it's probably shaking. I'm actually probably not in bad light, but is it necessarily what we want to do in terms of consistency? I don't know what the audio is like. I'm also in a place where any second now somebody could be coming up and talking to me. That may not be what you want to do from a professionalism perspective when you're talking to your interview subjects. Another thing which I'm focusing on a little bit more is right now is eye contact, right? Like, it's one of the challenges of Zoom that we'll talk about how you can be looking at your person, which is right here, and looking at the camera, so that they're getting the experience of looking at you. The audience is getting the experience of looking at you. It's always very interesting though, because truthfully, I would certainly rather having the person have the experience of looking at me and feeling like they're talking to me, and let the video or the visuals sort of fall where they may. But I don't think you have to choose. A lot of this is just about understanding a few of the tricks of the trade, right, with regards to doing Zoom interviews. So that's one thing. In terms of training, we also I want to talk about what kind of prep you can do, how to sort of, if somebody says something and you're like, I kind of feel like I want to do a follow-up question here, how to do that, how to balance your sort of setup of questions with who you want to, or what follow-up questions might come up. But the goal is to, as quickly as possible, get somebody to do at least a startup interview. And even if it's a startup interview like this, where
you're really just doing it to practice. Or maybe it's an interviewer interviewing another interviewer, right? Just to get the experience, just to work out the kinks. And then what my vision is to have a way that basically, as you accumulate projects, as you accumulate gigs, interviews, you can then have what am I saying? You can basically have your portfolio or your resume, and somebody can look at it and say, "Hey, I like that person," or "I don't like that person," etc. The great news is this: this is not a zero sum game where, you know, if this person over here wants to interview the mayor of Chicago and this person over here wants to interview the mayor of Chicago. I mean, truthfully, you guys get to go out, reach out to the person and decide. They get to decide who they want to talk to. Our goal is just to give you opportunities to do that, if that makes sense. So no, that yes, I think that makes sense. And so what happens afterwards? What So we're interviewing right now and we're going to have an MP4 at the end of this conversation. What happens with it? So that's a really good question. And it's funny because that's always the question that somebody says, right? Like, what are you going to do with this? And from my perspective, I want to make sure that there's benefit to the people involved throughout the process. So, for instance, if I'm a teenager, if I'm a student, and I get to have an interview with the CEO of this company, then I get benefit even if that video, that recording goes in a drawer somewhere, right? The CEO of the company would get more benefit if they were able to do something with it, but they can even get benefit out of talking to the student, to the interviewer. They can work on the way that they describe things. They can sort of get a sense of a different perspective in the interview. But let's say that they then also get a copy of the recording. And one of the things that we do that may be a little different than some people, whatever, it's we just do a transcript of it. So you can get a recording and a transcript of it. Now, if we end up doing it live, then there's obviously potentially some people might watch it live. But what we really are thinking about is how to capture it, and then what can we do with the recording. So we part of what we do for every recording is there's going to be a producer, and that producer's job is to decide what they want it to look like, both in advance of recording and then after they record it. What do they want to do with what actually was created? And then that passes it along. Typically, not always, typically they'll pass the video on to a video editor. The reason I say not all the time is that video editor costs money. So if we don't have a sponsor for the video, or if we don't have if it's not sort of self-sponsored by the person who's being interviewed, uh, or we don't have a video editor who is interested and willing in doing it for experience, then that thing will probably just go be a raw video that people can access without any video editing. The goal is to at least get, $10, $20 from sponsors or self-sponsored or whatever, so that we can do a reasonable video editing, because it doesn't cost that much to do video editing if you have a producer who's already made the decisions, like we want these clips, these cuts, etc. So if we have that, then it's really not that big of a leap or a big of a lift to get $10 to pay for a video editor, spend a half hour on it. And when I say video editor, again, I'm still talking about students. So once we do that, you then have this video, and we have a sort of database or an inventory of interviews. We share those out in a variety of different sources, or a variety of different places, depending on what they're about. But one of the things that I'm really excited about and experimenting with is the opportunity to have people, in the same way that we have teen producers, student producers, and we have student interviewers, and we have student video editors and editors, right? Because we're also talking about editing transcripts and putting things together in that kind of way. The idea of having teen marketers or teen promoters that can share the video out into the world, the interview out into the world, and do it in such a way where they can get paid. And for people who've never heard of advertising or never heard of affiliate marketing, the idea that you could share a video and get paid is odd. But if you think about it, a few years ago, maybe 5, 10 years ago, the idea that you could make money out of making videos was kind of odd, right? But the reason that people make money out of making videos is that they sell advertising space on those videos and they get paid if the people click on the videos, etc. And so what we're playing around with is a model like that where you can get paid, maybe not a lot, but maybe a little bit for just sharing the interview that either you did or your friend did or whatever on our platform. So that again is one of those processes or one of those things I'm working on, which is just how would that model work and what technology needs to support it. But frankly, all of that occurs on the far side of doing interviews that people think would be interesting to other people. Now, again, we don't have to have it be interesting to a million people necessarily. It could be interesting to 20 people. That's fine. I mean, part of this is showing how when you combine interviewers and interviewees, then you create the opportunity to get stories shared out into the world. So that was a long answer to the question, where is this being shared? So a whole variety of sources. So if somebody wanted to get involved, how would they get involved? So that's the great question. Let's just talk about interviewers right now. If you're interested in this, if you either would like to make some money or you would like to sharpen your skills from a public speaking or a interviewing or just not performing, but like presentation type world, or you're really interested in specific topics, or you're really interested in specific people, and you'd like to have an excuse to connect with some specific people, then really what you want to do is just sort of raise your hand, and whatever the website we're using, I'm sure we're probably on kidbizinc.com, which is where you can register to be on the directory and get started being kind of qualified to interview. Now, let me say this. You don't need my permission to go out and interview anybody. You go do what you want. And if you want to send me the video, I'm sure we'll share it. But if you want help, if you want some training, if you want some resources, if you want some ideas, then make sure you're on the directory, because that'll also make you more visible to other people who maybe are looking for somebody to interview them. So that would really be the first step, would be to just get on the directory, and then we'll plug you into a baby step process. And you know, anybody who knows me knows I like baby steps. I just don't want to have to do baby steps. So I like to take that first baby step, but then, you know, if you want to, after you've watched the video like this, go and schedule an interview with, you know, Barack Obama, great, do it, you know, and I'll try to help you get it going. But this is your, you know, we're looking for freelancers, right? You're a freelance interviewer, and maybe we can give you some opportunities to interview people, or maybe you bring your own opportunities to interview people. We're just trying to help you kind of put all those pieces together. And you know, if you're interested in some of the other things, like let's say you're interested in video editing, or you're interested in being interviewed, right? Maybe you are going to be a great interview subject for somebody else, or you want to do marketing or the regular editing, not video editing, but like document editing. Those are all great. But really, yeah, it's plugging in. I mean, going through the simulation that I've created where you can go through a interview like this. In fact, I think right now we're going to shift on to some like unusual questions, and then just to show how you can do that in an interview. So I encourage you to get involved. So Fraser, there's been some, you know, you have a lot of things going on. How do you make sure that the projects that you are starting continue or move to completion? Well, that's a good question, and the short answer is I try to, and I do not succeed. I have lots of projects that I thought were great and that I thought would take off like gangbusters, and that, you know, died on the vine. Or I don't like to say died on the vine, because one of the things I find more and more is that an idea that might have stalled out like I'm thinking about, we did this student newspaper back in 2014. I loved it. And we probably did 3 or 4 issues. And then I tried to resuscitate it back in 2017. And I think we got an issue out of it. And then I think we tried to resuscitate it in 2020. And I don't even know if we might have got an issue out of it. Now with the interview project, I feel like, oh, this, it makes all the sense in the world. I have to be better at baby steps in that sense, or under promising, over delivering, or whatever. But one of the things that I'm trying to get aware of is that, yeah, this is what I do. I have ideas, and I am blessed to be able to do some programming, and I'm not scared of the video camera, and I have a few network people that I can connect with. So I put things out there. And one of the things I'm trying to do is to pull back a little bit from having to manage all the pieces. But the interview project is a great example. I mean, I'm not going to try to drive it. I like to do interviews, so I don't mind at all doing some of my own interviews, but I'm putting it out there. I'm creating the directory, creating a video like this. I'm creating some training, and then I'm going to let it weave together, as opposed to me try to make it bigger than it is. So what are some, what should parents be concerned about the idea that their kids might be talking to strangers? Yeah, I think that's a really important parenting role, right? It's easy sometimes to, especially, I guess, with the internet, it's easy to say it's fine. You're not coming into real contact with people. You're on Zoom. But then there's also, of course, the craziness, which is you're accessing people all over the world. All I'll say about safety is you need to be plugged in to what your interviewer is doing, right? I can't do anything but that. Fundamentally, we have a tool that helps people coordinate when they're doing their interviews, but they don't need to use it, right? Your kid could go, in theory, go reach out to whoever they could go reach out to. So what I say to the students is your parents need to be plugged in and approving and supervising everything that you do, either in advance or during the interview, or after the interview as well.